The latest news came from the first floor of the tower known as Babylon. The Black Dragon Guild has decided to attack. They confidently declared that they would show what a top-tier guild could do. However, once again, they returned empty-handed. The reason for Black Dragon's failure was the #1 hunter known as the Flame Emperor, who single-handedly massacred the boss on the 40th floor. The press cheered Flame Emperor and praised him for setting another record. From the moment the tower appeared until now, only Flame Emperor had been able to defeat the boss single-handedly. The reporter asked if he had anything to say. However, the Flame Emperor looked annoyed and snatched the microphone from the reporter's hands. He expressed his disappointment and asked why the title Flame Emperor was being used instead of his real name, which he thought was a lousy nickname. He expressed his displeasure and stated that he intended to find those responsible for creating the nickname and torture them. Teo watched the interview on her laptop and envied the Flame Emperor for being able to say whatever he wanted. He turned to the HunterNet app on his cell phone where people were discussing the Flame Emperor. Even though the whole world was watching, Flame Emperor's bad behavior during the interview was discussed. Rumors of Flame Emperor's affair with one of the saints were also discussed. Meanwhile, Teo wrote the same sentences several times and dreamed of becoming like the Flame Emperor. Soon people noticed that Teo was repeating himself and began to guess who he was. Teo kept writing the same sentences and was envious of the rumors that the Flame Emperor was well-liked and had great wealth. Teo thought enviously that if this world were a novel, a man like the Flame Emperor would definitely be the main character, and he would only be a supporting character. It was then that Teo caught the attention of a reporter who asked Flame Emperor a question. He praised Flame Emperor's accomplishments and asked what the secret to his success was, as he knew that many aspiring hunters respected Flame Emperor. The Flame Emperor sighed irritably and reluctantly replied. Teo carefully searched for the key to success. In the end, the Fire Emperor emphasized that those who were destined to succeed would eventually succeed. However, this was followed by a solemn warning that any attempt to stop him in his tracks would result in death. The Flame Emperor turned and began to leave, ignoring the journalist's attempts to question him about his previous statement. The journalists expressed bewilderment and annoyance, but in the end, they did not answer anything. The broadcast ended. Teo closed the laptop with tears in his eyes. He felt deep anger and resentment. He wondered if it was permissible for such a great Flame Emperor to ignore people. He wanted to possess the same skills as the Flame Emperor. He believed that such skills would spare him from living in a workshop where he was looked at as an F-class hunter with no skills. He wanted to be like the Flame Emperor and excel in his skills. How great it would be if I could master the skills of the Flame Emperor. Suddenly, a golden light flooded Teo's room and caught his attention. He looked up in surprise and recognized the phenomenon from countless videos. Teo thought it might be a skill card, a valuable skill-granting item. At that moment, a message appeared in front of Teo, displaying an envy unprecedented in history. Shocked by Teo's obscene envy, the pagoda granted them a new skill. Teo was stunned by the unexpected turn of events and remembered stories of people receiving messages of support and rewards from the tower. This message, however, was somewhat different. Another message appeared, stating that the tower was celebrating the achievement. Teo ignored the message and focused on the fact that he had received a skill card. This was the moment he had been waiting for ever since he stepped on the threshold of the tower. The card glowed a stunning golden color and symbolized the S rank of a skill. As Teo clutched the card tightly, a new message appeared in front of her. A skill card was immediately created, and Teo's eyes widened as she read the description. It was the skill, I Want to Be Like You, rank S+. This skill automatically activated after death and allowed you to copy the skill of the person you killed and make it your own. However, it is impossible to copy the skill of an enemy who has already killed you, and the copied skill is chosen randomly. It was also stated that using this skill results in death. Teo got tears in his eyes. What kind of technique is this? The tower came to our world without warning. Those who had nothing to lose were the first to enter the tower and explore its depths. Each floor of the tower was crawling with otherworldly monsters. Some of them were chosen by the tower and given unique abilities. As word spread, more and more people flocked to the tower, eager to hunt monsters and find their luck. In an interview, a man expressed his reverence for the Flame Emperor by recounting a battle in which he witnessed the Flame Emperor wielding a flaming spear. He compared this movement to the dancing form of the god of destruction. He emphasized that despite reaching the highest rank, the Flame Emperor's attitude remained the same. Teo turned to the shopkeeper and said he wanted to see something else. The shopkeeper asked if he didn't like Flame Emperor. He explained that his lack of enthusiasm had nothing to do with Flame Emperor. He lamented the contrast between those who live extraordinary lives, such as the Flame Emperor, and those who are constantly suffering from bad luck, such as himself. The shopkeeper sighed as he realized that Teo was also one of those who felt that way. Teo revealed that he had gained the S+ skill the day before, but did not report it to the Hunters Association because using it would have resulted in death. Teo, overcome with frustration, cried and complained about how bad he would feel if he had to claim the technique as his own. The frustrated salesman advised Teo to go outside and vomit. He went outside. His gait was uncertain. In the current hunter ranking, the Fire Emperor was first, the Black Dragon was second, and the Viper was third. Teo shuddered, discomfort building in his throbbing head. Suddenly, a distant scream broke through the hangover haze. Intrigued, he shifted his gaze to the narrow alley. In this alley, Teo's misty eyes caught the Flame Emperor and Saintess in a tense confrontation. The saint was pleading desperately, her voice trembling with fear and confusion. The Flame Emperor wryly praised her acting skills and suggested that anyone who witnessed their interactions would believe her innocence. He showed a small bottle and claimed that he had put a substance called basilisk stomach acid in the drink she had just drunk. He accused her of having intended to drink the drink herself. He threw down the bottle and expressed relief that he would have been in trouble without his hand. The saint shuddered and explained that it had all been a misunderstanding and she wished to team up with the Flame Emperor to remove the tower. The Fire Emperor chuckled and said that he had thought the same thing, but it turned out that he was wrong. He asked the saint to clear up the misunderstanding. Teo's heart raced as he tried to make sense of what was happening. He had always assumed that the Flame Emperor and the saint were in a relationship, but their current conversation was different. Smirking, the Fire Emperor squeezed the girl's throat tightly and asserted his superiority. He let her speak, but made it clear that he set the rules of conversation. As Teo watched the dangerous exchange, thoughts swarmed in his head. It became clear to him that this was not just a conversation between two people, but a blood-chilling clash between those who wanted to kill and those who wanted to survive. The Flame Emperor took control of the situation with a cold, calculating tone and forced the saint to obey him. He told her that he knew how to recognize lies and demanded the truth. The Flame Emperor asked if the Black Dragon sorceress had sent her to kill him. However, the saint remained silent, avoiding eye contact. Not satisfied with her answer, the Flame Emperor's hand glowed with a red and ominous light. He made his intentions clear and bid farewell to the saint. A piercing scream filled the air, reflecting the last moments of the saint's life. Teo was struck with horror at the sight of this terrible scene. The man he admired as a hero had shown his dark and ruthless side. Many thoughts ran through Teo's mind as he ran. He cursed the Flame Emperor as a murderer and a psychopath. He must run as far away as possible. However, as fate would have it, Teo's escape was cut short when he accidentally stepped on a glass bottle, which shattered badly. To his horror, the Flame Emperor appeared from around the corner, his eyes fixed on Teo. The Flame Emperor's icy words pierced the air, and he realized that Teo was the last rat in the vicinity. Teo looked into the Fire Emperor's eyes and felt a mixture of fear and anger. In his eyes was the look of an assassin. He realized that the saint was not the first victim. How many lives had the Flame Emperor taken? Dozens, hundreds, or maybe more. Teo lost his balance from the surprise and fell to the ground. Only then did he realize the horrifying truth. His own severed leg lay right in front of him. The Flame Emperor approached him with a burning weapon. Teo begged the Flame Emperor for mercy, desperately trying to save his life. Teo made no effort to hide his innocence and mumbled that he had seen nothing. The Flame Emperor was intrigued by Teo's reaction and questioned him further. Teo assured him that he had seen nothing and promised not to tell anyone. The Flame Emperor sat down next to Teo and told him what he was doing. He claimed that Teo had called him Flame Emperor and that he had not seen something he should not have seen. The Flame Emperor expressed disbelief and said he almost believed Teo's words. Teo blanched, begging him not to tell anyone and asking for mercy. The Flame Emperor smiled evilly and threatened Teo that if she refused, she would suffer the same fate as the saint. He wondered who had sent Teo and if he was related to the Black Dragon. Teo looked at the Flame Emperor and was forced to see him as a demon. Teo mustered up the courage to talk about the Flame Emperor's claim that he had the ability to recognize lies. He said that if the Flame Emperor used this technology, it would show that Teo was not an agent of an important person. However, the Flame Emperor asked him what the skill of recognizing lies was. Teo was stunned and asked if the Flame Emperor had killed the Flame Saint simply on suspicion, without any proof. The Flame Emperor flatly denied the accusation, saying that Saint planned to kill him and poison him the next day. When Teo expressed surprise at the Flame Emperor's knowledge, the Flame Emperor simply said that he had his own way of doing things. When Teo thanked him for believing in him, the Flame Emperor placed his hand on Teo's head, a hand with a red glow. With a bloodthirsty smile, the Flame Emperor declared that now that he had seen everything, he must die. At his farewell, the Flame Emperor called out his real name, Yusuha. Teo remembered the words of the headmaster and reminded him that, since his name was Teo, he should live up to his name. He smiled and reiterated his determination to live up to his name. Being on the verge of death, he found it undesirable to meet his end in this way. Suddenly the news of his death came. Teo wondered why he had to die this way and lamented his way of life. Suddenly he heard that his death had fulfilled the skill requirement and was now creating a skill card. Driven by the desire to gain a better fate, he suddenly noticed a golden card urging him to choose a skill card. With desperate hope for new possibilities, he reached out and grabbed the gold card. When Teo picked it up, a message appeared saying that the skill had been copied. Suddenly Teo woke up in bed, shocked at what was happening. He was soon stunned by the sound of the news coming from his laptop. Upon hearing the news, he was even more shocked. Stunned by the unexpected turn of events, he could not help but voice his bewilderment, wondering what was really going on. His face reflected shock, and he asked himself when he had returned and what had happened. He immediately checked his cell phone for news and hunting network chats. He was pretty sure he had died a few minutes ago. In an instant, he summoned 2 skill cards with the single phrase, Skill card revealed. The first card showed a seemingly useless rare skill called I Want to Be You. Then, looking at the second skill card, he wondered if he had gotten the skill Flame Emperor when he died. The skill was called Clockwork Return Mechanism and had an EX rating. Teo's shock was compounded when he realized that the skill allows one to return for 24 hours before death. After returning, memories and abilities are retained, but the penalty increases as the hunter's level increases. This skill was copied from the hunter. Teo wondered if this new power was a legendary ability possessed by hunters. The day after the saint's poisoning, the Fire Emperor's motives are revealed. The next day he poisons the saint. However, Teo felt a surge of anger. Despite his innocence, he was the victim of the Flame Emperor's conspiracy. He shifted his gaze to the laptop where an interview with the Flame Emperor was in progress. The reporter asked the Flame Emperor to tell the secret of his success in a few words, to which the Flame Emperor replied that whoever was destined to succeed would succeed, but one had to be careful not to get in the way as it would lead to death. Teo, driven by determination and a thirst for revenge, decided that they would see who would meet their end this time. Suddenly his thoughts were interrupted by a loud scream. There was a great fire. People were filling buckets with water and desperately trying to put it out. Teo went outside and thought that the place where he lived was different from the outside world. Cities were built by aspiring tower hunters. Babylon, the city of the second floor, the city of lanterns. But no matter what they were called, the meaning was the same. Once in a city, a man could no longer leave it. The townspeople could not escape the ordeal of the towers, where they were forced to live in extreme danger. Teo rushed to the scene of the fire and realized it was the same time he had been drinking. He realized that the Flame Emperor had set the building on fire to cover up the evidence of his actions and create chaos and confusion. The head of the Black Dragon Guild, Black Witch, ordered the water users to cooperate and temporarily take control of the situation. They were determined to put out the fire and help the survivors. Alchemist, leader of the Healers and Apothecaries Guild, guarded the perimeter and worried about the survivors who were still inside. Rescuers were urgently needed to rescue the survivors. Captain Holly Knight, who heads the city organization, assured everyone that no one has lived in the area for 5 years. In the commotion, the alchemist noticed the sacred knight's absence and became concerned, especially since she was not lingering at such an important moment. The holy knight considered the possibility that she was meeting with the Flame Emperor, as she often meets with him. However, the alchemists expressed their distrust of the Flame Emperor. At that moment, the Fire Emperor appeared and asked who it was who was playing with fire without permission. The Holy Knight greeted the Flame Emperor and took the opportunity to ask for his help in putting out the fire that had engulfed the old slum. The Flame Emperor responded with a question asking what he would receive in return. Teo gripped the knife tightly and realized that this psychopath, the Flame Emperor, had the nerve to demand a reward for putting out the fire he himself had set. The Holy Knight tried to change the Fire Emperor's mind by saying that his good deeds were praiseworthy. However, the Flame Emperor made it clear that he did not care about the opinion of others. He left, stating that he was not engaged in public work. Teo was determined to confront the Flame Emperor and destroy him. He realized that despite his disgusting character, the people regarded the Flame Emperor as a legendary figure. Teo believed that no one knew the true nature of the Flame Emperor, but they disregarded it and considered him a hero with eccentric facial features. Only Teo knew the harsh reality behind the killer's face. He felt responsible for killing him in the name of humanity and the honor of the hunters. As Teo approached the Flame Emperor, he was stopped by an anxious man. Not paying attention, Teo moved forward. He firmly believes that the monster deserves to be killed regardless of personal danger. However, instead of attacking the Flame Emperor, Teo threw himself into the raging fire. He felt the heat and burns all over his body and cried out in pain. Those around him watched in shock as he endured the scorching heat. Teo knew that sacrificing himself was the only way to defeat this monster. Suddenly a message appeared in front of him: "You are dead," followed by, "Go back 24 hours." When he regained consciousness, he found he was in the past, and his laptop was displaying the latest news about the Black Dragon Guild's attack on the 40th floor. Teo was relieved that his skills had worked correctly and brought him back in time. A message appears stating that the hunter's current rank is F. He realized that it was impossible to kill the Fire Emperor at this moment. Even if he was lucky, the Fire Emperor had a similar skill that allowed him to turn back time 24 hours. Therefore, Teo, as a low-ranking hunter, had only one way to track down this man. Encouraged by his determination, Teo recalled his awakening during his encounter with the Flame Emperor. When asked by the interviewer about the exact time of the awakening, the Fire Emperor replied that he awakened about 11 years ago in the summer of the 21st year. The awakening occurred on his birthday, June 7th. According to Teo's calculations, the Flame Emperor had awakened 4,000 days before the present. Faced with a difficult task, Teo realized that the Flame Emperor would have to die 4,000 times before awakening. Taking a knife in his hand, Teo decided to commit suicide. As he was dying, a message appeared before his eyes, indicating his death and subsequent return to the events of the previous 24 hours. When Teo woke up again, he looked at the knife and realized that there were only 3.9999 days left to complete his mission. He repeatedly committed suicide and died many times, each time traveling through time. Due to his low rank as a hunter, he was not penalized for using his abilities. With each death, the number of days left decreased, first to 2,000, then to 525 days. But he stubbornly continued to persevere. Finally, with a smile on his face, he realized that today was his last day. As he prepared to meet his destiny, he finally got the chance to come face to face with the Flame Emperor. Waking up in his bedroom, he got out of bed and looked at the blank wall where numerous news articles about the Flame Emperor had once hung. It was a clear sign that his plan had succeeded. He had returned to a time when the legend of the Flame Emperor had not yet been written. Sighing, he realized that he had died 30 times more than he had originally planned. Given the time it took him to commit suicide and everything else in between, he survived the ordeal so that his demonic legacy would not live on. Full of determination, Teo left his room just when it was time to look for prey. 11 years ago, on May 6th at 11 o'clock in the morning, he saw the Flame Emperor lying in his bed with his alarm clock ringing. He had a headache. He shouldn't have drunk so much. Teo planned to repeat the day about 10 times to get the perfect result. At 9 a.m., the Fire Emperor woke up and left the F-rank hunter's apartment. He went to work, expressing dissatisfaction with his miserable life. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he was hunting slugs on the first floor of the tower. Teo realized that the Flame Emperor was tired of hunting slugs every day and wanted to live in luxury like the Sword King. For 21 years, the Flame Emperor has been an ordinary F-rated hunter, waiting for his life to change for the better. Teo realized this, but knew that the future would not be what the Flame Emperor wanted it to be. To disguise himself, Teo killed the red slime and covered his body with its gooey liquid, preparing for the next stage of his plan. At 5 in the evening, the Flame Emperor went up to the 6th floor. Teo realized that he couldn't just hunt slugs anymore and would have to go to a more difficult area. For the next 30 minutes, Teo knew that there was no one in the area but the Flame Emperor. With a determined look, Teo approached the Flame Emperor covered in red slime and asked for help, saying that she had been attacked by a wolf and needed medicine. The Flame Emperor looked at Teo and told him that if he had already dealt with all the monsters in the area, the day's hunt was over, and let him go. Teo insisted that he really needed the medicine, but the Flame Emperor responded with a frustrated question as to why he should offer an expensive medicine to a stranger for free. Teo apologized in confusion, not understanding the situation. The Flame Emperor disagreed, expressing frustration that he was already struggling to get enough daily rations and could not afford to dispense expensive potions. Teo convinced the Flame Emperor by explaining that the price of the medicine offered by the Chemist Guild was 20 gold, which he was willing to pay. However, the Flame Emperor interrupted him and said that if he can only pay 20 gold pieces, Teo seems to be undervaluing his life. The Flame Emperor doubted the value of Teo's life. Teo really wanted the cure, so he increased his price to 40 gold. Not wanting to miss this opportunity, the Flame Emperor smiled and demanded that Teo give him all the money. The Flame Emperor grabbed Teo by the collar and took away his wallet. The Flame Emperor thought that he was the kind of person who took advantage of other people's money. After examining the contents of his wallet, the Flame Emperor counted the money and realized that Teo was quite poor. Teo claimed that it was his entire fortune. The Flame Emperor smirked and said he would be sure to use the money for its intended purpose. When Teo asked for medicine, the Flame Emperor reached into his inventory and pulled out a weapon, fearing that he might be retaliated against if Teo was released. He said he wanted to live without regrets and wanted Teo to die because he saw his face. Teo had a quick reaction, dodging the attack and striking back with his foot at the Flame Emperor. Determined to live without regrets, Teo snatched up his knife and rushed to counterattack the Flame Emperor. According to Teo, he could not allow a life-threatening incident to trigger the Flame Emperor's awakening. Teo is determined to destroy the Flame Emperor forever and put an end to this. Teo exploded with anger and screamed at the Flame Emperor, expressing his outrage that he had hurt so many people. Turning away from the scene, Teo discovered a pack of red wolves nearby and offered to let them eat the corpse of the Fire Emperor. When the wolves began their terrible feast, he continued on his way. He removed the grass to retrieve his hidden bag. Having changed into fresh clothes, he prepared to go up to the first floor. When he arrived at the site and was teleported to the first floor, doubts did not leave him. Was it really all over? With fear and a sense of foreboding, he noticed a knight patrolling. Heading for the exit, he and the knight took the same stance, making him nervous. But to his surprise, the knight passed by without noticing him. Then he realized that no one knew what had happened. The truth about the actions with the Flame Emperor and his own revenge remained hidden, and Teo felt relief and completion. At the bar, he felt joy and relief that the ugly legend of the Flame Emperor was gone from the world. He called the waiter and asked for more beer to celebrate his victory. The waiter noticed Teo's enthusiasm and asked if the day's hunt had been successful. Teo was impressed with his valuable skills but realized that he lacked offensive power. He wondered if it was the greed of human existence, but reminded himself that with his current skills he could still accomplish great things. Teo pondered various options for his future. He could use his abilities to win the Trade Guild lottery or sell valuable information about the secrets of the upper floors. He felt his life had changed and he was ready to live. Encouraged, he thought about where to go next and looked forward to the new opportunities that were opening up before him. At that moment, an elderly man entered the bar. The old man calmly ordered a drink and asked for warm milk with vodka and a little sugar. Meanwhile, Teo turned his attention to the television news. The news anchor said that hunters needed to unite with each other, especially in difficult times, and inquired about the location and activities of the sacred sword. To his surprise, the figure of the holy sword shown on television turned out to be none other than an old man sitting in the same bar as him. This discovery intrigued Teo, and he wanted to find out who the holy sword was and what its purpose was. The Sword Saint had always been at the top of the rankings until the Flame Emperor became famous. Teo kept an eye on Holy Sword's reputation and pondered if he had any serious skills, such as S rank, as opposed to Teo's only skill, I want to be like you. Teo thought, what if he could copy the movement of any hunter trying to kill him, even if that hunter was the #1 hunter in that era? Realizing that he would never die again, Teo was confident of achieving greatness. When training the sacred sword, it was noticed that it came from a wealthy family principal. However, no one knew what skills it possessed. However, no useful information about the holy sword could be found. Suddenly, the Sword Saint spoke to himself in a loud voice, ordering someone to cover their mouth and not be so loud. Surprised by this encounter, Teo realized that the Sword Saint was indeed talking to himself and wondered if this often happened to high-ranking hunters. Teo's attention was drawn to an article titled, "Warning, you should never speak in front of the Sword King." The author claimed to have witnessed a situation where several high-ranking hunters began to accuse and provoke the Holy Sword. However, the matter took an extremely dangerous turn when they confirmed the grandson of the Holy Sword. As a result, they were instantly killed by the Holy Sword. The readers had doubts, suspecting that the author worked for a large guild and was just spreading rumors. Not afraid of the skeptics, the author replied that he didn't care if they believed him or not. He just wanted to share information and warned readers that if they wanted to avoid a similar fate, they should never mention the grandchildren of the Holy Sword in his presence. After reading the article, took the information to heart and thought it was worth testing. As he did so, he could be heard talking to himself, demanding silence and expressing his willingness to process something, while complaining that his presence was spoiling the flavor of the vodka. After paying the bill, he thanked the drinks and left the restaurant. On his way out, the waiter said, "Have a nice day." One of the girls in the bar expressed relief that he had finally left. Her companion wondered if the Holy Sword was suffering from dementia and why he was talking to himself. When Teo heard the Holy Sword leaving, he also got up, thanked the waiter, and handed him the money. The waiter thanked him and told him to come again. Teo left the bar, determined to find the Holy Sword, now a rank 1 hunter. He left the bar right behind him, so he must not have gotten very far. Teo left the bar, determined to find the Holy Sword, now a rank 1 hunter. He left the bar right behind him, so he must not have gotten very far. He wondered what kind of feats the Holy Sword could possess. He thought that it might be a more amazing technique than the rare EX rank Flame Emperor technique. Teo harbored hopes of acquiring this skill for himself while his lucky streak continued. However, the Sword Saint suddenly stopped and shouted loudly for him to get down. Teo was surprised and realized that he had instantly detected his presence. The Sword Saint told him that he was in the right place and added that no one knew what had happened there. Teo turned around and addressed the Sword Saint politely, stating that he had a request. Surprised at Teo's approach, he doubted his intentions and inquired why he addressed him thus. Teo was puzzled when he realized that the Sword Saint seemed to be preparing to attack. Teo's thoughts were filled with confusion. At that moment, the Sword Saint appreciated Teo's acting ability and said that he was a first-class assassin. Teo trembled with fear, apologized, and expressed his confusion. Teo inwardly wondered why the Sword Saint would think that, but realized he shouldn't be provoked by the mention of his grandson's murder. Teo muttered an apology and denied that he had intentionally followed him. The Sword Saint expressed his contempt and disgust at Teo's behavior. He accused Teo of trying to deceive him, but said that his efforts had been in vain. Teo had the courage to approach the Sword Saint and ask for an explanation. He didn't understand why the Sword Saint considered him a first-class assassin, even though he was ordinary and unremarkable in appearance. The Sword Saint drew his sword and silenced Teo, saying that he had several techniques, some of which indicated the number of people Teo had killed. Teo admitted that he had a reason for his actions. He killed the Fire Emperor to prevent him from becoming a future monster. However, Teo realized that in front of the people of the present, his act was not justified. He imagined that the Sword Saint sees the number 1 above his head, which signifies one murder he has committed. Teo begged the Holy Sword to listen to him and explain everything, that he had a good reason for his action and was willing to swear even on his own life. The Sword Saint took off his hat and admitted that he himself had not led a clean life, and insisted that he had not participated in such ruthless murders as Teo. Stunned, Teo said that he had killed only one man. However, the Sword Saint pointed his sword at Teo and accused him of shameless lying. According to the sacred sword, the number of the men killed by Teo, 4,091, was displayed above his head. Teo realized that the number 1 was the case of the Flame Emperor's assassination, and the number 4,090 indicates the case of his suicide. For Sacred Sword, Teo is a legendary assassin with 4,091 deaths to his credit. The Sword Saint asked if the Black Dragon Witch had sent him. Teo, panicked, ran away, and the Sword Saint stood pensive without an answer. Teo realized that the situation goes beyond copying techniques. As long as he has this special skill, whenever he sees Teo, he will try to kill him. The Sword Saint swung his sword at Teo and decided to use all his power to end his life, calling him a demon. Teo managed to dodge Holy Sword's attack, which surprised and prompted Holy Sword to praise him as a first-class assassin. Teo managed to dodge Holy Sword's attack, which surprised and prompted Holy Sword to praise him as a first-class assassin. Realizing that he could not dodge the next attack, Teo prepared himself for what was to come. Suddenly, the Sword Saint shouted that he must capture Teo and interrogate him. He shouted. Teo saw that Mecha Saint was talking to himself and thought that this conversation was too realistic to write it off as psychosis. He considered the possibility that the Sword Saint communicates through telepathic techniques. Teo concluded that if he shared his information with others, the deaths of 4,091 people would be attributed to the killer. He would be sought out by hunters' associations, targeted by large guilds and high-class hunters. Eventually, he feared that he would be publicly executed in Babylon Square. Determined to prevent this fate, Teo believed he must die within 24 hours to turn the tide. Standing up resolutely, Teo appealed to the Holy Sword for the safety of his grandchildren, citing the dangers they might be exposed to as members of a wealthy European family. Teo hinted in passing at the dangers of the outside world. He also expressed confidence that his grandchildren would grow up to be good people because they had inherited his lineage. The Holy Sword was raised, and Teo's gaze turned to the moon. He marveled at its beauty and wondered if the moon had always been so upside down. At that moment, Teo didn't even feel the blow of the Holy Sword. Overwhelmed with desire, he wanted to become just like the Holy Sword and wondered how he could reach such heights. He felt a strong sense of envy and expressed a desire to possess the same level of skill and strength. When Teo's life ended, the message of his death appeared, and by fulfilling the skill requirements, a skill map was created. Teo was ecstatic, thinking that he had managed to obtain the skills of a rank 1 hunter from 2 different eras. However, when he was asked to choose a skill card, He was disappointed to find that there were no gold cards. They only had bronze and silver cards. He thought there would be gold cards like the ones he got from the Flame Emperor. He wondered if the Sword Saint could have made it to the top on his own, without S-ranking ability. He doubted that such a thing was possible. Even so, he decided that the silver cards might contain super-powered abilities. Disregarding the 3 copper cards, Teo decided to choose one of the 4 silver cards. However, the probability of that was only 1 in 4. In his choice, Teo was in dire need of a strong ability. He needed something outstanding, not a mediocre skill like counting kills. When he selected a card, a message appeared saying that the skill would be copied and it would return to a time 24 hours ago. Teo was confused, woke up in bed, and immediately ordered "Open the Hunter's ability window." He eagerly searched for the psychic skills he thought he had acquired. To his surprise, Teo found the Sword Constellation skill. Although he recognized that his A+ rank skills were still commendable, he favored unusual martial arts and aura awakening classes, skills. He couldn't help but feel a thirst for more powerful abilities. Lying in bed, Teo reflected on the fact that the skills he had acquired were passive. However, he consoled himself with the fact that he had an A+ rank. Teo's curiosity took over and he thought, the skill card is open. He realized that the name of the skill alone didn't say much about its effect. Suddenly his thoughts were interrupted by a voice. Who's talking so loudly? Teo turned to the side and saw a red-haired man lying on his back. The man called Teo an old man, scolded him for making noise during the night training, and asked him to keep quiet. Teo's face contorted with confusion and disbelief as he struggled to understand the identity of the red-haired man in front of him. Red expressed his frustration by reminding him to be quiet during the evening training sessions. He emphasized that there was no need to disturb the old man as he naturally followed his movements. Stunned by this conversation, Teo asked the red-haired man who he was. To his surprise, the red-haired man asked Teo if he could see him and hear his voice. Teo actually sensed the redhead's presence as they were busy talking. Puzzled, the red-haired man stood up and said it was strange to see and hear him. He then asked where they were, surprised that the place was so small, like a dog box. He also inquired about the old man's whereabouts. Teo asked curiously if he was referring to the Holy Sword. The red-haired man confirmed this, admitting that it might be foolish to call a novice a mecha saint, but explained that that was what they called him all over the world. Teo asked incredulously if a mecha saint was really a novice. A red-haired man looked out the window and complained that he couldn't see much through the small window. Teo checked the red-haired man's information and found out that he was a swordmaster from another world. He had reached the 99th floor of the tower of his world, but before he reached the 100th floor, he was defeated. Out of resentment, he turned into a wandering spirit that could not physically interact with the current world, but could mentally communicate with capable people and give them advice based on his vast knowledge and experience. However, only capable people could perceive and communicate with him. Teo thought for a moment and concluded that the red-haired man was a ghost. Curious, Teo asked the red-haired man if he was the spirit associated with the sacred sword. As if to confirm Teo's suspicions, the spirit admitted that he was the spirit of the sword. Teo apologized, saying that he had accidentally copied it from the Holy Sword. The sword spirit, unable to believe his eyes, opened his mouth wide and demanded that the old man hand it over immediately. The spirit was so moved that it cried and begged Teo to cancel its potential and take everything back. Teo felt helpless, covered his ears, and explained that the situation could not be changed. In despair, the spirit of the sword sat upside down on the roof of the room and scolded the Holy Sword, calling it a failure because it had been able to be stolen so easily by the enemy. Teo was frightened by the sword spirit's cries and asked him to live peacefully. The sword spirit replied that he could not live peacefully since he was already dead. Teo, in desperation, asked him to die peacefully at least then. In response, the sword spirit continued to wail, accusing Teo of arrogance, pointing his finger at him, and expressing disbelief at his audacity to order the ghost to die once more. Teo wondered why the sword spirit was so talkative, and suddenly remembered that the holy sword had a habit of talking to itself. Then he realized that it was because of the spirit's presence. Disappointed, Teo complained that he would now have to hide from the holy sword for the rest of his life, as well as bear the burden of accidentally copying techniques. The sword spirit asked why Teo would want to hide from the holy sword, and said that other than his grandson, no hunter could match him. But Teo interrupted him and said that he already knew, but he had the skill to see how many people had been killed. The sword spirit said it was detective insight, but the sword spirit interrupted him, saying that this skill is useless. It only gives an idea of whether a person is a murderer or not. Teo told about the 4091 kills. The sword spirit looked at him with disdain and said that Teo was crazy and a newbie among newbies. He criticized him for his lack of aura and asked him how he got 4091 kills. Teo explained that of the 4091 people killed, only one was a real person who would become a villain in the future. The other 4090 he killed himself to activate his ability. His ability was to copy the skills of the person he killed, and the person he attacked had skills that allowed him to return to the day before his death. This made Teo practically immortal, and one day he would die and return. His main motive was revenge, but the target, the number one hunter in their world and a man of rare skill, was too powerful for him to defeat. Then Teo decided to go back in time, to the moment when this man awakened his power. Intrigued, the sword spirit questioned Teo's decision to turn back time just to get revenge on one man, and set himself up for a series of suicides over the next 11 years. Then the spirit came closer to Teo and asked his name, to which Teo said what his name was. The surprised sword spirit asked why Teo had decided to imitate the old man's technique right after taking revenge on the Flame Emperor. Teo explained that the old man was the number one hunter of his time and that he needed to learn the strongest techniques to become stronger. The sword spirit noted that Teo answered the question honestly, since the skill card indicated that only he could perceive them. This information would not be shared with anyone else, so there was nothing to worry about. Teo confirmed that and said that was the case. The sword spirit signaled Teo to stand up and examined his body. The spirit commented on Teo's excellent determination and noted that he was in good physical shape and had admirable ambition. The sword spirit looked at Teo's potential and marveled at his talent. Interested, the sword spirit asked him to teach him how to hunt monsters. They arrived at a hunting field full of red slugs. Teo asked how many slugs he needed to kill, and the sword spirit said he needed to kill a few. Teo began to hunt the slugs one by one, skillfully wielding his knife. As Teo fought, the sword spirit watched him closely. After a while, the spirit expressed that his intuition was confirmed. Teo was interested in this and asked about the intuition the spirit had spoken of. The sword spirit said that in his past life he was known as the Emperor of Swords. He came from another world where there was a tower similar to the one he had now. He boasted that he climbed the tower at a speed unmatched by others. After reflecting on this information, Teo realized that while the Flame Emperor had reached the 40th floor and became a legend, the sword spirit had reached the 99th floor. It was admirable, this feat of the sword spirit. The sword spirit believed that the true measure of a hunter's talent was his behavior. so he asked Teo to demonstrate his hunting skills. In response, Teo looked on, recognizing that the sword spirit's efforts would be in vain since he didn't know how to fight at all. The sword spirit, puzzled by Teo's self-deprecating statement, strongly refuted it. He claimed that Teo had a talent, and an outstanding one at that. Teo was stunned by the sword spirit's words and thought he was mocking him. However, the spirit explained that Teo's lack of fear of death was his unique talent. While it is natural for many people to try to defend themselves in a fight, Theo's fear of death probably diminished after 4,000 repeated experiences of dying. Teo expressed surprise, wondering if something like lack of fear could be considered a talent. The sword spirit confidently asserted that talent is not an innate ability, but something that is awakened in the process of life. Of all talents, overcoming the fear of death is one of the most difficult and outstanding achievements. Teo reflected on this revelation, realizing that no one had ever spoken to him in this way before, including himself. He originally wanted to take revenge on the Flame Emperor who had wronged him, but his anger caused him to die 4,000 times without hesitation. Now he knew that death would be his gift. The sword spirit asked Teo what he thought of his death at the hands of the old man. Teo replied that he remembered the moment and thought it was beautiful. The sword spirit was completely surprised by Teo's answer and began to laugh. After laughing for a while, the sword spirit expressed his delight that their situation was so funny. Realizing that Teo's skill was not stealing but copying, the sword spirit suggested that the old man might have a copy of it. Curiosity flared in his soul as he pondered who was a better hunter, Teo or the sword saint. With unwavering confidence, the sword spirit declared that he would help Teo. He swore that Teo would not be defeated by the old man, but would surpass him in strength. Together they would conquer the tower and strive for new heights.